Hello, greetings, everybody. My name is James. I'm from the internet. Today we are going to be talking about hoarders. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the television show Hoarders, but it's been on the air for more than a decade, and it usually chronicles family members finding out that other family members of theirs are hoarders, either currently in life or after they pass away when they go to clear out the house. Now, the thing about hoarders, and why sometimes it's so jarring, is because it's one thing to hear a number, it's another thing to see what a number looks like. For example, if I told you that I literally had 1 billion newspapers, you'd be like, wow, that sounds like you got a shit ton of newspapers. But if I brought you into a house that was filled with 1 billion newspapers, literally stacks of them from floor to ceiling, to the point where every single room was just a tiny corridor, and you walked through a maze of literally 1 billion newspapers stacked floor to ceiling, you would be blown away. Why? Because now you can see what 1 billion newspapers actually looks like, rather than just hearing the number and having to sort of figure out what that means relatively in the size or scale of the world you live in. Now, I have not watched Hoarders in a while, but the reason I brought it up is because I thought about it today after I perused the news, and I saw that Forbes magazine released their newest list of the Forbes 400. You know, the 400 wealthiest people in the world, the biggest hoarders of them all. So today, I thought we would take a quick look at the list so I could show you just how much money the wealthy are hoarding. Here we go! The richest Americans became 40% richer during the pandemic. Wow, I really love the picture of post-coital Jeff Bezos just after he gets out of his dick-shaped rocket that cost like $400 million to launch, all of which was subsidized with our tax dollars. The perfect lead-in image for this story. The 400 richest Americans added $4.5 trillion to their wealth last year, a 40% rise, even as the pandemic shuttered large parts of the U.S., according to Forbes magazine's latest tally of the country's richest people. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, the guy with the post-coital picture we just looked at, that dude, yeah. He retained the top spot for a fourth consecutive year with a net worth of $201 billion. Also, that's after the massive payout he had to put on the table after his wife divorced him. Still, the wealthiest person in the world. Bezos was closely followed by heavily government-subsidized Elon Musk of Tesla and Mark Zuckerberg of heavily unregulated Facebook. And the two of them were the $190 billion and $134 billion, respectively. And very briefly, I know I'm throwing out numbers, and per what I told you in the beginning of this video, I'm going to take a stab at showing you just how ridiculous that is in a little bit. To make the list, people now have to have a minimum net worth of $2.9 billion, up $800 million from 1 year ago. Wow, could you imagine if last year you were worth $2 billion and you were on the Forbes 400 wealthiest people list, and in the last year, during the pandemic, you made $800 million in profit, and then you get a letter from Forbes magazine telling you that you actually got bumped off the list? The pandemic initially triggered a record-setting wave of layoffs, only for the working class. The job market has recovered significantly, but the economic impact of the coronavirus is still shaking large parts of the U.S. economy. States are bracing for an avalanche of evictions after the expiration of federal protections. Stock markets and property prices have continued to soar, trends that have disproportionately padded the wealth of the richest. Okay, now we're going to call the timeout. We're going to take a break here. I'm going to try to break a little bit of this down for you. Over the course of the last year and a half, markets have been extremely volatile, and the government has given out a record amount of free money. Now, of course, there are certain people who would have you believe that when the government gives out free money, well, that's socialism because they're giving it to all the poor who are just too lazy and don't want to work. Yet, after a year and a half of the pandemic, the average working class American is now making less per hour than they were a year ago. Yet, the top 400 wealthiest people gained an additional $4.5 trillion in wealth. So obviously, all that welfare and socialism wasn't going to the bottom. A tiny little portion of it went to the working class, and most of that came in the form of a check that people flipped over, signed, gave to their landlord flipped it over, signed it, and they gave it to the bank to pay the mortgage. So again, all the government really did there was launder about $1 billion through the working class into the banks. But the rest of that stimulus money, that ended up in the pockets of the wealthy capitalist. You remember all those loans that were going to be easily forgivable if you paid 80% of your staff to stay on at 80% rate? Yeah, nobody did that. Everybody fired all their fucking employees. And then we just turned around and told all the businesses that they didn't have to pay back any of their loans anyway. So these are just a couple of reasons why the working class is still poor as fuck, while the wealthiest people have picked up almost another $5 trillion. Despite the uncertainty in the ever-changing market economy, the 2021 Forbes 400 shows that America's wealthiest have grown far richer. Yeah, there's a fucking shocker. The people who control all of the capital, most of the resources, and most of the wealth, the people who have the kind of money to influence marketplaces, to literally change the landscape of them so that everything is entirely in their benefit, were able to do exactly that and then profit from it while the working class became poorer. And now real quick, let me show you what the Forbes article looked like. More than twice as many people joined the Forbes 400 this year compared to last year, with nearly 2/3 of them making their fortunes in finance and technology. Finance and technology. This is the part of the show where I point out that finance and technology don't generate jobs. So this isn't money that goes back into the economy and then gets circulated through the working class. This is money that a couple or a handful of white rich tech bros put in and then take out 100 times more, and they don't spend any of it on anything that stimulates the economy for people who make less money than them. Here, let me give you an example of what it looks like when different sectors of the economy create wealth and jobs. Walmart, for example, the most hated retailer in America. Yeah, they employ 2.3 million people. Granted, they don't pay them dick and they treat them like shit, but they do have 2.3 million employees. Now, let me give you a little bit of perspective here. Coinbase, whose founder joined the Fortune 400 list this year as one of the wealthiest billionaires in the United States of America, yeah, he got on that list while creating a whopping 1,249 jobs. Leading the newcomers with a $30.4 billion fortune is Miriam Adelson, wife of the late casino mogul Sheldon Adelson, who died in January at the age of 87. So that one's kind of an even swap in and out of the list. She and her late husband have been among the biggest backers of the Republican Party. In the 2020 election, they gave $180 million to political action committees and Republican candidates' campaigns. Of course, because here in the United States of America, money is free speech, ergo, you're allowed to spend as much of it as you want to influence elections and legislation to solely benefit yourself. However, At age 75, Adelson isn't even the eldest newcomer in the 2021 list. No, that distinction goes to 80-year-old Robert Brockman, the secretive billionaire software investor who's been charged by the U.S. government with directing the biggest tax evasion scheme in American history. He's pled not guilty. So after deducting $1.3 billion of his assets, which have been frozen as part of the court case, he's still on the list with a net worth of $4.7 billion. The youngest newcomer is 29-year-old cryptocurrency billionaire Sam Bankman-Fried, who is the second richest new entrant with an estimated $22.5 billion fortune. Now, if he is a new entrant in last year, you would have roughly $2.1 billion to have made the list, and he wasn't on the list. That means this year alone, this person made over $20 billion in 1 year. Close behind him in age, if not net worth, are fellow crypto entrepreneurs Brian Armstrong and Fred Ersham, co-founders of the crypto exchange Coinbase. You know, the one that employs fewer than 1,300 people. Yeah, that one. Yeah, job creators. And joining them is Baju Bhatt, co-founder of the stock market trading app Robinhood Markets. Yeah, you remember Robinhood, the stock trading app for regular ordinary people like you and me who can buy stocks, except for when shit gets hairy and billionaires are about to lose a ton of money because everybody's leveraging their shitty investment, and then Robinhood conveniently pauses all trading on their app just to take care of their billionaire buddies. Yeah, that fucking guy. Outside of finance and tech, the next largest cohort of newcomers is from the healthcare industry, including Li Ji of Shanghai-based medical device maker Wuxi App Tech, and a trio of backers and executives of vaccine maker Moderna. Early investor and Harvard professor Timothy Springer, Moderna's co-founder and chairman Noubar Afeyan, and co-founder and MIT professor Robert Langer, who between the three of them, doing some quick back-of-the-napkin math, are worth, about $15 billion. Must be nice to be able to just rack up 10, 20, $50 billion in profit in 1 year. Well, this takes me to the visual cue I was going to give you before. Let me show you a little something. This chart shows the average hourly earnings for all employees in the United States for the last calendar year, from August to August. As you can see, the highest, the peak it reached, when everybody was freaked out that there weren't enough poor people to make their Dusha Mocha Frappuccino for them at McDonald's in under 90 seconds. So fast food places went absolutely berserk and started offering people like $12 an hour. You remember that? Yeah. Well, that was the peak, $11.44 an hour. As of the end of August, the average hourly earning in the United States of America is $11.23 an hour. Now, the perspective portion of the show. This is what 4.5 trillion as a number looks like. It's a shit ton of zeros, right? You're thinking to yourself, okay, so it's a lot of zeros. What's your point? Well, the average U.S. laborer in the last year has made $11.23 an hour, while the wealthiest 400 people have added $4.5 trillion to their wealth. 400 people made all that money. Now, do you want me to show you how many hours a regular laborer making the average American hourly wage would have to work to make that kind of money? Here, let me introduce you to math. Well, let's see. We will just divide that by $11.23 an hour. Survey says 400 billion hours of labor. So what does this mean for you, the average viewer at home, the average member of the working class? Well, what this means is you are getting screwed royally twice over on the daily, because the wealthy are using their money to pay the powerful to have access to power, while the powerful, the people in government, are more than happy to sell access because they have tons of power but no money. And thus, the symbiotic synergy of plutocracy is born. So, I would ask you at home, please do not believe the hype. When you hear that the wealthiest are getting so much wealthier and the real estate market is booming and the stock market is at an all-time high, remember, none of these things have anything to do with you, because chances are you don't own your house, you don't own stocks, and you're not on the Forbes 400 list. Just some food for thought before you head on into your weekend where, undoubtedly, unlike the wealthy, most of you are going to be working. Until next time, my name is James. I am from the internet, and I am out. Peace.